Hello YouTube, it's Snowflarky Zemos here today with my Barrel Dragon Dark Machine deck profile. Barrel Dragon, iconic Duel Monsters era boss monster. Very cool. Definitely was one of my favorites growing up, and just based on the design of just like a robot dragon with these massive cannons attached to it. And also, as far as gameplay, I really enjoyed the wackiness of the coin flipping and the coin flip cards. And thanks to Legendary Duelist 2, a couple years ago, we were able to get a decent amount of Barrel Dragon support, enough to make a fun, playable deck for a casual setting. So this is one of my favorite go-tos to bust out for the Duel Night with friends. And with that, let's get into the card by card. Starting off with our monsters, we are playing 3 copies of Desperado Barrel Dragon. This is the big boss card payoff of the Dark Machine deck. A pretty sick monster that just says if a face-up Dark Machine monster you control is destroyed by battle or card effect, you can special summon this card from your hand. Once per turn during the battle phase, quick effect, you can toss a coin 3 times and destroy face-up monsters up to the number of heads. And if you flip 3 heads, then you additionally draw a card. This card cannot attack the turn this effect is activated. If this card is sent to the graveyard, you can add a level 7 or lower monster that has a coin flip effect from your deck to your hand. So pretty powerful monster. I mean, it's got 2600 attack. It summons itself for free from your hand just for a, face up Dark Machine getting destroyed. That's something that'll definitely happen. We're perfectly fine, getting this card off of that effect. And, being able to flip 3 coins during the battle phase, that's pretty disruptive, especially, if you've already baited out the gates or whatnot. You can just pop monsters during the battle phase. Pretty sick. And even draw a card off of it. That's awesome. Now you can't attack with it, but that's okay. Destroying multiple monsters with coin flips is definitely worth giving up a silly old attack. And even when it's destroyed, you can search a level 7 or lower coin flip monster, which is, we have plenty of other targets in the deck. Supports the original Barrel Dragon and Blowback Dragon and whatnot. So definitely a card we want to see 3 of, and we want to be summoning as much as possible. Next up, I am playing 2 copies of the classic Barrel Dragon. 7-star Dark Machine with 2600 attack says that you toss a coin 3 times. If 2 out of the 3 are heads, you can destroy a monster on the field. Pretty cool effect, still pretty useful. Now, of course, coin flip, it's inconsistent, but we got some ways to manipulate that in the deck. Barrel Dragon and Blowback Dragon both used to be kind of harder cards to play in this deck. But thanks to Fusion deployment that came out, it's a lot easier to summon these because you can just summon them right out of the deck. And of course, if they're in your hand, well, we have a way to get them out. So makes them a lot more playable, and that definitely made the deck a lot more fun, because before it seemed like kind of playing the original Barrel Dragon was just kind of a burden. Now, pumping it out for free with Fusion deployment, popping a card, triggering all the other effects that synergize with it is pretty awesome to have. Next up for our monster, going with the Barrel Dragon, is the Blowback Dragon. It's a 2300 attack, 6-star monster. This one, you can toss a coin 3 times, and if 2 out of the 3 are heads, you can destroy any card on the field. So pretty cool. It's nice that you can hit spell and trap cards with Blowback, makes it a bit more flexible. The fact that it's a 1 tribute monster makes it easier to summon if it's stuck in your hand and you don't have any of the other card effects to get it out on the field. And overall, just makes it a better card than Barrel, but we're glad to have both because we can use the synergies to go into their fusion monster. It's the other half of the fusion material, so pretty cool card. Next up, I am playing 3 copies of Twin Barrel Dragon. This is one of our normal summons that we have in the deck. Twin Barrel Dragon is not too great of a card. It's a 1700 Dark Machine. When this card is summoned, select a card your opponent controls, toss a coin twice, and if both results are heads, you can destroy that card. Now that doesn't give you an incredibly high odds to to destroy the card, but the coin flips are still important because they can trigger other effects in the deck. This is a normal summon card that we can search off of a destroyed Desperado Barrel Dragon, and for that reason, it's definitely a card worth having. 1700 attack, also pretty solid on this body, so you know, getting in some damage. So, you know, it's an okay card, mostly just using it for the coin flip synergy and its ability to be searched, and also get to show off this beautiful playset of super rares of that card that I have. Next up, we are playing 3 copies of Bm4 Blast Spider. This is one of the other cards that came out in Legendary Duelist 2 to support this kind of deck. It's a Dark Machine, 4 stars, 1400. Once per turn, you can target a Dark Machine monster you control, which does include this card, and 1 face-up card your opponent controls, and destroy them. If a monster you control that was originally a Dark Machine destroys an opponent's monster by battle or card effect and send it to the graveyard, you can inflict damage to your opponent equal to half the original attack of one of those monsters destroyed and sent to the graveyard. You can only use each effect of Blast Spider once per turn. So Blast Spider, it's got a 2200 defense, which is pretty good if you need a set and wall on against a slower deck, which is fine. But also BM4 Blast Spider, you know, it's a normal summon, and it can pop a card by popping itself, or if you have a already spent Twin Barrel Dragon or something left over on the field, you can spend that too for BM4 Blast Spider's effect. And outside of just removing a card, that ability to destroy synergizes well with Heavy Metal Raiders and other support in the deck. I mean, it can trigger your Desperado Barrel Dragon from the hand. You know, if Heavy Metal Raiders is on the field, which I'll talk about in a bit, it can summon you other Dark Machines from your hand. So for that, definitely makes it a card we want to see. And last up for the monsters, I am playing 2 copies of Fusillar Dragon, the dual mode beast. This is a 7-star 2800 monster. This card can be normal summoned or set without tribute, but its original attack and defense become halved. So this is a card I like having in this deck because it's a bit flexible to, you know, we can summon it off of Heavy Metal Raiders if we don't have any bigger monsters to summon. If we don't have any of the coin dragons to summon off of Heavy Metal Raiders, it's still a good target to summon off of that, because it's just a 2,800 attack big monster. But it also has the flexibility of just being able to be a normal summon if it's stuck in our hand, get a Dark Machine on the field, and even though it will have low attack, that's not that bad because we have ways to boost it, and you know, we can still surprise our opponent with some of the synergies it has in the deck coming up. And that is it for our monsters. Next up, we are getting into our spell cards. Starting off, I am playing 3 copies of Heavy Metal Raiders. This is the deck's field spell, and kind of one of the lifebloods of this deck. Very important card, so we're playing 3 of it because we want to see it. Essentially, this card says the first time each Dark Machine monster you control would be destroyed by battle each turn, it is not destroyed. And if you took battle damage from the battle, it gains that much as attack after damage calculation. So that's one of the things that makes it not so bad to just summon a 1400 Fusillar Dragon, is it'll be able to survive battle damage once, gain that attack, makes it tricky for your opponent to play around and try to out that, just because they have to have 2 attacks and they would have to, you know, do it right so that the damage doesn't make the attack too high. So that's pretty cool. Could get your monsters really beefy if you do that pretty well. And of course, then once per turn, if a monster you control that was originally a Dark Machine destroys a card on the field by battle or card effect, you can special summon a Dark Machine monster from your hand. So this is a good way to get Barrel Dragons or Blowback Dragons from your hand onto the field and use their effects. You know, you can get Fusillars out of your hand for big 2800 bodies, get Desperados, you know, definitely a big payoff. Very good card to have. You know, keeps the whole deck alive. It'd be nice if it had some more protection outside of just battle for machines. That's probably the main criticism of the card, but we're working with what we got. You know, because we want to see this card, we're playing a single copy of Terraforming. We want to see the card. We want Heavy Metal Raiders to always be live, so we want to see it as fast as we can. Next up, I am playing 3 copies of Fusion Deployment. This card is a very exciting addition to the Barrel Dragon deck. Essentially what fusion deployment is that you can reveal a fusion monster from your extra deck and special summon from your deck one of the fusion materials whose name is specifically listed on the card. You cannot special summon monsters from the extra deck except fusion monsters the turn you activate this card, and you can only activate one fusion deployment per turn. So Barrel Dragon and Blowback Dragon do have a fusion monster called Gatling Dragon. Taking a look at it here, very nice. So what that means is by revealing that Gatling Dragon from your extra deck, you are able to just summon out Barrel Dragon or Blowback Dragon for free. That's pretty awesome because they're pretty big monsters with nice effects. Effects that can get your heavy metal raiders proccing, the proton blast, all that works. So we definitely want to pull those out of the deck if possible, and just keeps things moving. So and the fact that it locks us into special summoning extra deck monsters that are only fusion monsters is not that big of a deal because Barrel Dragon isn't really made to be an extra deck combo deck. So we kind of build around that concept to where that punishment is not so bad. Next up, I am playing 2 copies of Machina Defense Perimeter. This is a pretty fun card to have that lets you loop and generate resources. It works really well with 2 cards in particular, which I'll explain in a second. But first, to explain the card effect. While you control a level 7 or higher machine monster, your opponent's monsters cannot target a level 6 or lower machine monster you control for attacks. Also, your opponent cannot target them with card effects. Not an effect that comes up too often, but do note that both Desperado Barrel Dragon and the regular Barrel Dragon meet that condition of being a level 7 or higher monster, so if one of them are on the field, that effect is live. And, but more importantly, the other effect for this is that if a face-up machine monster you control is destroyed by battle or card effect, you can target one machine monster in your graveyard, add it to your hand. You can only use this effect once per turn. So if you've already lost some machine monsters that are in your grave, you can use this effect to grab it to your hand. What's pretty nice about this is you can use this to fetch Desperado Barrel Dragons and put them back in your hand, and because of his effect, it's pretty easy to summon Desperado Barrel Dragon back from your hand, so that's definitely a card we want. The other card that tends to be the next best target for this is actually Bm4 Blast Spider, and there's a pretty cool interaction where you can use Blast Spider, blow up a dark machine and a card your opponent controls, and then Machina Defense Perimeter can add either the Blast Spider if you tribute it, or whatever card you just tributed, or get your Desperado. So that's pretty nice, and if you retrieve Blast Spider after tributing Blast Spider, well then you have Blast Spider for a follow-up turn, which is pretty cool. Definitely can be a little slow. It's not a card that I want to play 3 copies because it can clog, and once I have one, it's good. But it's a pretty nice thing to have. Fits the deck theme pretty well. So it goes in. Next, I am playing 1 copy of Foolish Burial Goods. This is to dump the coin flip trap card into the grave because it has a graveyard effect. So we, want to do that. There's only 3 copies of that card, so 1 Foolish Burial, especially since I can only activate once per turn, is my preferred ratio. Next up, I'm playing a copy of Monster Reborn. Lots of big monsters that, can be sitting in the graveyard, can be going to the graveyard, and, a lot of those monsters are great to pull back out. So Monster Reborn can do that. It also special summons from the opponent's grave, so sometimes that's pretty cool. And last up for the spells, I am playing 3 copies of Pot of Extravagance. This, another deck of mine where the extra deck plays are not so great. Big shocker, I know, but doesn't change the fact that means Extravagance is just a shoe-in. Banishing 3 to 6 random extra deck cards allows us to draw 1 for each 3 that we did. So you send 6 cards from your extra deck, draw 2. It can be a little risky to banish all your copies of Gatling Dragon off of this, but that doesn't happen too often, and getting the card advantage is definitely nice. Now we can't use other draw effects the turn we use this, which mainly is important because it means if we get 3 heads on our turn using Desperado Barrel Dragon, we're not drawing a card. But other than that, that is not a big deal since mostly everything else is a search effect. And that is it for our spell lineup. Next up, getting into our trap cards, I am playing 3 copies of Proton Blast. This is the Barrel Dragon trap card that came out in Legendary Duelist 2, and it's not one of the strongest cards, but it fits to the theme pretty well, and it is a card that I find a lot of fun, so I am playing it at 3. Do note if you're trying to play a better version of this deck, there's definitely some things to change around, and maybe less copies or cutting this card entirely would be one of those just because the trap cards are slow. But anyway, getting into what Proton Blast actually does, once per turn, if an activated card effect tosses coins, immediately after it resolves, apply the following effects based on the number of heads. If you got 1 heads, you inflict 500 life point damage to your opponent. If you get 2 heads, you destroy a card your opponent controls, and if you get 3 heads, you look at your opponent's hand and discard 1 card from their hand. So do note for that effect that those effects stack, so if you get 2 heads, you get the 500 life point burn and the destruction, and if you get 3, you're going to get all 3 of the effects. That's definitely pretty cool. A lucky 2 or 3 heads can get you a lot of card advantage, destroying a lot of stuff on your opponent's field. And another important thing to note is that effect triggers immediately after the first coin flip effect. So if you want maximum potential, make sure you're trying to use a card like Barrel Dragon or Blowback Dragon or Desperado Dragon before you use any other coin flip, which in this case would just be Twin Barrel Dragon, just because Twin Barrel Dragon only has 2 coins, so you can't get that beautiful 3 heads effect. On top of that, this card also has a graveyard effect, which is why we're playing Foolish Burial Goods to dump it into the grave, and it's a pretty nice one. When an effect is activated that tosses a coin 2 or more times, you can banish this card from your graveyard to make all 3 results hit, which is pretty nice. If you got a Proton Blast in the grave, 1 on the field, and can trigger that effect, you're going to get all the Proton Blast effects, plus if it's something like Desperado Barrel Dragon, you're going to you're going to draw a card in addition to your 3 pops. It makes it so Barrel Dragon and Blowback always work, and another nice synergy is instead of being a 25% chance that Twin Barrel Dragon will destroy something, Twin Barrel can actually destroy something. So that's pretty cool. Definitely will be using that. Next up, I am playing 2 copies of Waking the Dragon. I've opted, other than the Gatling Dragons, to just play good Waking the Dragon targets. And, that makes it so, the extra deck is perfectly fine for being filled with Waking the Dragon targets. If it gets destroyed, we summon them out. It's pretty good. So, essentially, if this set card in its owner's control is sent from the field or the banished zone because of an opponent's card effect, you can special summon any monster from your deck or extra deck. So that could be Gatling Dragon if you needed the theme, but we also have plenty of big other extra deck powerhouses that are kind of game winners, which are usually the main go-to for this deck. It's a card. We have lots of spell and trap cards that are very important, so some mass removal cards might try to snipe our heavy metal raiders, and then maybe a face down. So if our face down is Waking the Dragon, we get some advantage off of that. Next up, I am playing 2 copies of Storming Mirror Force. Storming Mirror Force is a pretty risky card because it can get destroyed before you can use it, but the payoff is so good. When an opponent's monster declares an attack, return all your opponent's monsters to the hand. So it doesn't target, it doesn't destroy, it bounces everything to the hand so it can exhaust a board. Pretty nice, and knowing that you have Storming Mirror Force will get your opponent trying to pop more of your face down back row before they commit, and that could have them hit a Waking the Dragon. So the Mirror Force is always synergized pretty nicely with Waking the Dragon. In a slower deck like this, these kind of big blowout strategies are important to have in your back pocket to make up for the inherent weaknesses that your deck has. So, the risk and the reward is definitely one I'm happy to be taking. As always, though, be adjusting your trap card lineup to whatever you're comfortable with or whatever will win you games against the kind of decks you're going up against with your group or your local scene. Next up, I'm playing 2 copies of Gozen Match. There's a couple floodgates in this deck because honestly, sometimes you just want to win, and if you can abuse a floodgate to win, that's perfectly fine with me. I like punishing people who don't have the spell and trap removal to deal with it. But anyway, Gozen Match just says each player only control 1 attribute monster. Send all other face-up monsters they control to the graveyard. So everything is built around being a dark machine. So every monster we have in the main deck is a dark machine. We might as well take advantage of that Gozen Match. And of course, you could also play Rivalry of the Warlords in this spot. Depends on which one is working out better for you. I like Gozen Match because it's still pretty good and it allows us to still take advantage of some of our extra deck waking the dragon targets so they wouldn't get locked out, whereas Machine would be a lot more restrictive. So for that reason, I'm playing Gozen Match, always open to be swapped. Next up, I'm playing a copy of Skill Drain, another floodgate that I decided to play just because Skill Drain wins games, and sometimes I want to do that. While we have big monsters with coin flipping effects and whatnot, and those effects will be negated, the fact of the matter is your opponent's monster effects are probably better than those, so not too big of a punishment. And a lot of the big Barrel Dragon cards have, big attack. 2600 on Barrel Dragon, 2800 on Desperado Barrel Dragon, and that the fact that Heavy Metal Raiders has the ability to boost their attacks means that, if you turn off effects and the game just becomes big bodies beatdown, well, it's hard to beat the Heavy Metal Raiders with that because they'll just keep boosting and not getting destroyed by battle. So, Skill Drain, sometimes we want to auto-win. And last up, I am playing 1 copy of Necro Fusion. Do note this card could be Overload Fusion because this is essentially just a way to turn Barrel and Blowback Dragons in our graveyard into a Gatling Dragon. Necro Fusion just states that we can fusion summon a fusion monster from your extra deck by banishing fusion materials listed on it from your graveyard face down, but it cannot attack this turn. So you can play it on your opponent's end phase, get it out, don't have to worry that your monster can't attack. Do note that this Necro Fusion is not necessarily a good card. Honestly, a better version of this deck would just probably not bother trying to summon Gatling Dragon at all. But I think getting Gatling Dragon out is fun, so it's worth at least me giving 1 card slot. But if you are interested in more success with the deck, definitely recommend switching out Necro Fusion for just some other powerful trap, maybe another Floodgate. Some big blowout card. Evenly matched are definitely worth considering in this deck because it's a deck you want to go second, and it's a card I have sleeved and in the sideboard, but I don't main it right out the gate just in case I'm made to go first. But yep, Necro Fusion to get out Gatling Dragon. Could also be Overload Fusion, which is a spell card, which I'd probably play, but I just don't have it sleeved at the moment. And that is it for our main deck. Next, we're going to go into the extra deck. Starting off, the extra deck card that really counts. I am playing 2 copies of Gatling Dragon. I would max this out at 3 if I had it, but I only have 2 currently, so I'm only playing 2. 3 Gatling Dragon would just be nice because we don't want to banish all copies of this with extravagance, and 3 Gatling would just make the best odds. Mainly Gatling Dragon is in here so that we can play Fusion Deployment, but it is a monster that we can make if we use Necro Fusion. The Necro Fusion or Overload Fusion definitely get better with 3 Gatling Dragons just because, we want to, if we want to summon one, we want to still have one on hand in the extra deck just for future fusion deployments. But it's pretty sick. If you summon Gatling Dragon, you toss a coin 3 times and destroy a number of monsters on the field equal to the number of heads. This effect can only be activated once per turn during your main phase. So, that's pretty good. Nice thing about that over Desperado is it's not limited to only face-up monsters like Desperado, but the main con is that you have to destroy the amount of monsters as heads. So if your opponent has one monster and you flip two heads, well, you got to destroy one of yours too, even if it's Gatling Dragon. So that makes it a bit wild. Definitely another thing that makes it, not so much of a great payoff to actually focus on going into. But it's awesome. I think it's a sick looking card. So, very glad that even if you don't summon it, we get to show it off by revealing it for fusion deployment. Next up, I am playing Waking the Dragon targets. My Waking the Dragon targets are, of course, 2 Naturia Exterio. This is the target we'll summon off of Waking the Dragon if our opponent is playing spell or trap cards that are necessary for the deck to function, and being able to negate those just wins us the game. Naturia Exterio says that you can negate a spell or trap card when it is activated by banishing a card from your graveyard and sending the top deck card of your deck to the graveyard. Basically, it means if you have a card in your graveyard, you can negate as many spells and traps as you want, as long as you have cards in the deck. Certain decks like Necros, which is a deck I face a good amount from my brother, you can summon this, and they basically just don't have any choice but to scoop. So if you're up against a deck that is similar, play Exterio and win the game. I'd play 3 of these, but I only have 2. So to sub out for the third, I'm playing 1 copy of Naturia Beast. Naturia Beast is just a synchro that can negate spell cards by sending the top 2 cards of your deck to the graveyard. Spells are normally what you need to negate anyway. It's very easy for decks to not play trap cards, and a lot of decks don't need them. So spells are the big thing to negate. So Naturia Beast is usually good enough. So if you needed to summon Exterio and all your Exterios are gone, but Nat Beast gets the job done, that's why the 1 copy is in there. Next up, I am playing 3 copies of Raid Raptor Ultimate Falcon. One of the best Waking the Dragon payoffs. It's a 3,500 attack monster that is unaffected by card effects. Makes it very hard to deal with. They either got to find a way to battle over it, or they got to kaiju it. The fact that this is a dark monster is one of the reasons I main Gozen match over Rivalry of the Warlords, because if Gozen matches up and I have a monster on the field, well, I can still summon Ultimate Falcon because it's dark and pretty sick. It's a pretty hard monster to deal with, so definitely a good one to go into, and can sometimes just be a game ender. Next up, I am playing 3 copies of Geomath Mech Final Sigma. This is kind of the Raid Raptor alternative. If all the Raid Raptors are gone, it's a 3,000 attack monster that's unaffected by card effects other than Math Mech cards if it's in the extra monster zone. Summoning it in the extra monster zone is no problem because we don't have much else that's going there. And so it's 500 attack weaker, which makes it a little worse than Raid Raptor Ultimate Falcon, but it does have an effect that if it does battle damage to an opponent by battling a monster, that battle damage is doubled. That's very cool. Sometimes that damage adds up, closes out a game. And then next I am playing 3 copies of Blue Eyes Alternative Ultimate Dragon. This is a 4,500 attack monster that cannot be targeted or destroyed by card effects. Not as good as being unaffected, but sometimes those 2 things are good enough against certain decks, and in exchange you get 4,500 attack, which is, 1,000 attack more than Ultimate Falcon. Makes it pretty cool. And of course there's you can also use Blue Eyes Alternative to pop a card on the field instead of attacking, so a little more flexible. Definitely warrants a slot in a Waking the Dragon style extra deck. And last, to make up for my missing Gatling Dragon, I am just filling it with simply a copy of Last Warrior from Another Planet. This is a fusion monster that when this card's special summon, you destroy all monsters you control, but then neither player can summon monsters. So if you summon this on an open board, your opponent doesn't have monsters. Well, if they don't have a way to out this, then they're not going to be able to get monsters. Certainly wins some matchups. A little fragile, so it's definitely the one I opted to get rid of for the Gatling Dragons. And if I get a 3rd Gatling Dragon, this card will definitely just become a 3rd copy of Gatling Dragon. And that is it for the extra deck. with that, that is all the cards of my Barrel Dragon deck. Definitely a very fun deck for me to pick up and play. I have a lot of fun playing it, and this version that you've seen here in this profile is kind of more of a purist thematic version. Definitely not the best version, and if I'm itching for a win, the floodgates, more floodgates come in, the trap cards switch up, things like that. That's kind of the thing about these decks is that you got to do that kind of thing if you want to win games. You always got to be adjusting it. So maybe I'll post more, a build that takes out some more of the clownier stuff and focuses more on just the best winning strategies while keeping the theme. But it's a very fun deck to play. You get to toss a lot of coins. You get to blow up cards. It's very fun to, pull out your bag of coins, flip them all over the place, and, destroy cards based on that. And let you use some sick-looking Dark Machine monsters from Bandit Keith in the Duel Monsters era. So let me know if you like Barrel Dragon, if you're a big fan, what your favorite Bandit Keith card is. In general, was a big fan of the legendary duelist deck, so very glad they gave us support to play these things. Even if they're not competitive, we can play them in a pretty fun setting, and they are fun to play. So with that, I am out of here, and I'll catch you in the next one.